If you would, please take a minute to check your cell phone to make sure that you have placed it on silent or vibrate. And once again, this evening, we are live streaming the meeting, so we welcome the members of the public who are here virtually as well. Members of the public participating virtually are asked to place their microphone on mute during the meeting with the exception of any public hearing. At the appropriate point in the public hearing, I will invite the public to unmute their microphone for purposes of submitting such comments as they may wish to make, one person at a time. All persons wishing to make public comments will be asked to first state their name and address for the record, and after completing the comment, members of the public are once again asked to place their microphone on mute, and we thank all of you for your cooperation this evening. With that, if you would, please join us in rising for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Hazen?
Here.
Mr. Belovich?
Here.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Here.
Mr. Benicki?
Here.
Mr. Emmons?
Here.
Mrs. DeMade?
Here.
Mr. Compton?
Here.
Mrs. Volker?
Here.
Mr. Hixenbaugh?
Here. Approval of the minutes of our regular meeting of September 18th, 2023. Are there any additions or corrections? Then hearing none, the minutes will stand approved as received from the clerk's office. Petitions, communications, remonstrance, and memorial.
Yes, Mr. President, we have appeal number 2023-24 to the Board of Zoning Appeals in the Mishawaka Common Council. This is a use variance to allow daycare center in R1 Single Family District at 206 West 8th Street. This is signed by Yolanda Segelson. Petition number 2023-20 to the honorable members of the Common Council, City of Mishawaka, Indiana. Petition to rezone from I-2 Heavy Industrial to C4 Automobile-Oriented Commercial, 1213 East Jefferson Boulevard, and rezone from I-2 Heavy Industrial to R1 Single Family Residential, 1212 Stanley Street. This is signed by Grigor Pekpal. Petition number 2023-21 to the honorable members of the Common Council, City of Mishawaka, Indiana. Petition for annexation and zoning classification, annexing northern 13.55 acres and establish PUD and amend PUD for southern 6.88 acres, northwest corner of Burr Road and Beacon Parkway. We also have presentment of revised encumbered funds.
There was background information submitted by the controller with regard to the revised encumbered funds presentment. Are there any questions from the council? Then hearing none, the record will reflect that that information has been presented to the council as required under Indiana law. This evening, we have no report of any special committee, so we'll move into ordinances on first reading.
Proposed ordinance number 2023-41, an ordinance of the Common Council of Mishawaka authorizing advance payments on contracts for public works projects and goods and services.
Proposed ordinance 2023-41 will be assigned to the Public Improvements Committee.
Proposed ordinance number 2023-42, an ordinance declaring an emergency and transferring and reappropriating funds within the budget adopted for the calendar year ending December 31st, 2023. This is transfer and reappropriate funds in the Park and Recreation non-reverting fund in the amount of $25,000.
Proposed ordinance number 2023-42 will be assigned to the Budget and Finance Committee.
Proposed ordinance number 2023-43, an ordinance declaring an emergency and determining the expenditure of additional funds for the year ending December 31st, 2023. This is in the General Fund and Park Fund and Public Safety Local Income Tax in the amount of $1,220,000.
Proposed ordinance 2023-43 will also be assigned to the Budget and Finance Committee.
Proposed ordinance number 2023-44, an ordinance amending ordinance 5829, the fixing of the salaries of all sworn public safety for the City of Mishawaka, Indiana for the year beginning September 20th, 2023. This is amending the ordinance fixing the salaries for all sworn public safety employees.
Proposed ordinance 2023-44 will be assigned to the Budget and Finance Committee.
Proposed ordinance number 2023-45, An ordinance amending ordinance 5811, fixing the salaries of all employees of the city of Mishawaka except Mishawaka Park Department, elected officials, and the Mishawaka Utilities for the city of Mishawaka, Indiana, for the year beginning September 20th, 2023. This is amending ordinance 5811, fixing the salaries of the Human Resources Safety Director.
Proposed ordinance 2023-45 will be assigned to the Budget and Finance Committee.
Proposed ordinance number 2023-46, an ordinance amending ordinance 5820, fixing the salaries of all sworn police officers for the city of Mishawaka, Indiana, for the year beginning January 1st, 2024.
Proposed ordinance 2023-46 will be assigned to the Budget and Finance Committee.
Proposed ordinance number 2023-47, an ordinance fixing the salaries of all employees of the city of Mishawaka except sworn public safety, Mishawaka Park Department, elected officials, and the Mishawaka Utilities for the city of Mishawaka, Indiana, for the year beginning January 1st, 2024.
Proposed ordinance 2023-47 will be assigned to the Budget and Finance Committee.
Proposed ordinance number 2023-48, an ordinance fixing the salaries of certain elected officials of the city of Mishawaka for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2024.
Proposed ordinance 2023-48 will also be assigned to the Budget and Finance Committee. This evening, we have no resolutions, so we'll move into ordinances on second reading.
Proposed ordinance number 2023-25, an ordinance amending Chapter 137 of the Municipal Code of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, is from time to time amended, commonly known as the zoning ordinance of 1966 of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana. This is rezoned from S1 extensive open space to C3 City Center Commercial, northeast corner of Cedar and East 3rd Streets.
Thank you. May we have the committee report, please?
Yes, Mr. President, to the members of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, your Committee on Land Use Planning, to whom is referred the matter of proposed ordinance 2023-25, report that they have examined said matter and in their opinion should be adopted. This is signed by the entire committee, and I move for its acceptance.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded to approve the committee report. Are there any additional questions or comments? Then hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We'll now move into second reading and public hearing on proposed ordinance 2023-25. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, please come forward.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of council. Ken Prince, Director of Planning and Community Development. This is a city-initiated request of change of zoning. This deals with the old former City Hall property. It's a little redundant, but that's... So the area of the Princess, where the statue used to be located, when City Hall was relocated over there, for some reason, that was zoned S1 open space, and the balance of the property was zoned C3 City Center Commercial. What we're asking for is that the entire property, including the S1 open space where the Princess was located, also be zoned C3 City Center Commercial. This will allow the future tenant, which is going to be United Way for the One Roof program, to use the entire property. Essentially, the S1 district is very restrictive on how it can be used. We did, as part of why we continued this item for multiple meetings, is because the One Roof program since July has changed in scope. So as you know, through the committee that was updated through the council, they've reduced the scope of the program. They no longer intend to build a gym on the property where the Princess is located, and they're merely looking to do an open area for a playground, essentially, to go with childcare that would be located in that building. We still believe that the rezoning is appropriate to allow for that use. Last week, we did redo the buy-sell agreement between the Redevelopment Commission and United Way for that property, and they still have plans to start construction yet this fall if everything moves forward, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Prince? Mrs. Volker.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Prince. I do have a question about the area that will now be used as a playground.
Okay.
The intention is it'll be used for a playground for children who are attending One Roof activities. And at one time, I believe it was United Way, said that playground area would be available for the community when it was not available, when it was not being used for programming for One Roof. Is that your understanding?
That is my understanding, though I do have to represent, we understand from dealing with public playgrounds that we have in the city that if they had issues of concern or vandalism, that they would also have the ability to lock it as well. So there is no mandatory, they have to keep it open, provided as a public park, but that is a commitment they made, that they would make that playground available to the public in off hours when the childcare was not using it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Other questions for Mr. Prince? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor? If so, please come forward to the podium. Then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anyone with us this evening who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come forward. And is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition? Are there any council members who wish to speak? I'll simply add, thank you, Mr. President, for your patience as we've worked through the evolution of this concept. And I think we all look forward to hearing more from our friends at United Way with regard to how the One Roof project is going to move forward. I certainly am in favor of this, and I appreciate the work that you've done on that revised buy-sell agreement. I have fewer concerns with regard to that end of the transaction as opposed to the ARPA end of the transaction as we discussed at the last meeting. As many will recall, we made a significant contribution to this project out of our federal coronavirus relief funds. And since that time, 2 of the 3 main players have indicated that they're not ready to move forward with the project. So I look forward to hearing more, I think we all do again, from United Way about the One Roof project as it moves forward, so that we can not only look at the use of the building, but look at the use of the money that we have approved to support this project. So unless there are any other questions or comments from the council, I will call for the question.
Question.
Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mr. Hazen?
Yes.
Mr. Belovich?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Mrs. DeMade?
Yes.
Mr. Compton?
Yes.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Hixenbaugh?
Yes.
Proposed ordinance passes 9-0. Proposed ordinance number 2023-40. This is the civil city budget and tax levy for 2024. This is a public hearing with no vote.
Thank you. At this time, we'll open the public hearing on proposed ordinance 2023-40, the civil city budget and tax levy for 2024. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, if you would, please come forward to the podium.
Good evening, Rebecca McGuire, City Controller. President and Council, the mayor sends his regrets. He's at his continuing education this evening, Ball State Mayor's Institute. And given the opportunity to present, I thought I would dig a little bit deeper into how the budget process works and then go into a few of the highlights of the budget. So please stop me at any time if you have any questions. I first want to start saying Deputy Controller Kayla Yoder is a huge benefit. She does a lot of the work behind the scenes, inputs a lot of data, budget book, our Gateway state program. So I just wanted to make sure I mentioned her. So the budget process starts right after June 30th, where we start by estimating our future revenue for the rest of the year and for 2024. And this will come into play later in the presentation. So with taxes, we have property and excise. We have other taxes, income tax and intergovernmental. And then we have our miscellaneous revenue. That could be licenses, permits, tickets, EMS runs, park program fees, and interest. In late July, we received our budget requests from our various civil city departments. Early August, we compile a draft budget. Mid-August, individual department meetings with the mayor. We sit down with the different department heads. discuss their needs and their wants. In late August is when we work on wages, what that does to pension, employer taxes, deferred comp match, and any insurance changes. And as you know, early September to mid-September, we have individual department meetings with the council. And I just want to say this year, I thought they were very beneficial and they went very smoothly. Mid-September, I meet with the mayor and finalize the budget, listen to his input, and we finalize the budget and put together our budget book. So the budget process is really an 18-month budget because we start on July 1st. We look to determine expenses. Whatever is left to spend of the 2023 budget gets added to the 2024 budget, and then we add estimated circuit breaker loss for the following year. And as a reminder, circuit breaker is the amount of property tax that we do not receive because it's capped. And that applies to homeowners as well as business owners and landlords. So those three items together are the funds that are required. When we go to revenue, the cash in the different funds as of June 30th are added to the miscellaneous revenue that we're estimated to receive for the rest of the year, along with an estimate of December 2023 tax collection, which is the property tax. And then we also add our miscellaneous revenue for 2024. And this is our funds that will be available. So the funds that are required minus the funds that are available are funds that are needed to raise. And when you look at this, the underlying items, those apply just for funds that receive property tax. If you take those underlying items away, that applies to the other funds that don't receive property tax. And to determine property tax, we have to calculate a tax rate. 4 funds receive property taxes because those funds do not generate enough miscellaneous revenue on their own. So we supplement with a property tax. We have 15 total funds that we budget. A few other funds include CEDAT, which is funded by income tax, public safety, also income tax, and local road and street, which is from motor vehicle highway funds. So when you look at the funds that receive property taxes, the general fund, motor vehicle highway, park, and cumulative capital development, we have to set the rate for that. And we also have to, as I mentioned before, accommodate the circuit breaker loss. So here's our tax rate calculation, how it's determined for our property tax. The amount to be raised is called the levy. So we take last year's levy, multiply by the new growth quotient, and that's given to us by the state. It was lowered to 0.04 by the legislative branch. We add the cumulative capital fund estimate because that's already set at 0.05. We know what that's going to be. And we divide that by the net assessed value, which is provided to us by the county. And you multiply that by 100, and that's the overall tax rate for the city. So the 2023 levy was our 30, to get the 2020, I'm looking at this, yeah. This is actually, I believe this should say 2024 levy. Well, I'm sorry. The 2023 levy is the $34 million here. And we multiply that times the 1.04. So that gives us our new levy. We add to that our cumulative capital fund estimate, and that's the new money that we can raise. And when you divide that by our net assessed value, the 1.8 billion, multiply that times 100, that is our tax rate for 2024. So when you look at this, you may think there's something missing. Nothing about the calculation for our tax rate involves the budget. So our budget can be any particular number, but it does not have anything to do with how our tax rate is calculated. But how it does matter is that, say we over budget, the state is going to come back and say, we cannot fund that budget. So I think a lot of citizens believe that our budget determines what the tax rate is, and that's not the case. And we like to see slow, steady growth. So before 2022, we had 7 years where our tax rate was right around 2.00. In 2023, as most residents know, we had a large increase in the assessed value. That caused our tax rate to drop. Now for 2024, our assessed value actually went down $64 million. So that, with the growth quotient of 0.04, brought the tax rate back up. So we don't like to see these different fluctuations, but it does happen if the assessed value raises or lowers a large amount. So with that, in late September, we have to input all the budget information, the net assessed value calculations into Gateway, the state information site. And you may notice in your information that the tax rate calculated that we're sending to the state is 4.24. It's not 2.00. And that's because we want to calculate the approved tax rate with a lower net assessed value. And what I have highlighted, what I have highlighted in yellow is what the state tells us to do. The state tells us to be conservative and to use a tax rate. You don't want a tax rate that is too low to generate the desired property tax levy. That's why we lower the assessed value to produce a higher advertised approved tax rate. Now, when the budget is submitted to the state, they're going to come back and readjust it all. They're going to say the budget is approved for the displayed amount, but the rate is reduced to remain within statutory levy limitation. So I'm confident the tax rate is not going to be approved at this 4.2403. But this is what is recommended to do, just to assure that we're going to have enough funding to come through to fund the budgets. So, as we know, the budget meetings is a four-step process. First reading, tonight, second reading and public hearing. It's one of the few public hearings nights that we don't vote. We'll have a vote on the next meeting, and then the final submission is due by November 1st. So this is our general fund number. So it compares the 2023 budget to the 2024 budget, the dollar change, and the percent change. Our 2024 budget is just over 44 million, a 3.4 million increase. A few of the departments that have higher than usual increases in human resources, we're adding a position of office manager for 2024. There used to be an office manager position, but that has not been filled for a few years. Police, as we know, increased wages and the corresponding payroll tax and pension increases. Now, we know we're going to be full staffed at less than the budget number we have for 2023. But since 2024 is going to be a transitional year, it didn't make sense to reduce overtime, clothing, the different items that can fluctuate. Because we don't know who's going to retire in January. We don't know how many new officers are going to come on board. So to be conservative, we did not change a lot of the account lines. I expect to have more changes in 2025 as 2024 cycles through. And we'll have more discussion on changes in wages at our next meeting when we have public hearing on the wage ordinances. Central service, we've increased staffing for the budget because we're hoping to do more projects in-house than contract them out. Now, this is all appropriated funds, including the general fund. We have our MVH funds, numerous capital funds, public safety funds, and our pension funds. Some changes here include local road and street. We had an increase in the number of plows we're purchasing next year. Our cumulative capital development increased because we reestablished the tax rate at 0.05 this year. This is a very important fund as it funds all our IT hardware and software. Law enforcement continuing education. We're increasing funding in that budget for ammunition and training. Our public safety local income tax. We are buying a complete set of new turnout gear for the fire department, optic duty pistols for the police department, and we moved some service contracts from the public safety departments from the general fund to the public safety fund. Other changes include in our EMS fund. This year we just purchased some equipment, but next year we are buying a new ambulance and refurbishing one from the fleet. In the ARPA fund, this year is actually a reduction in appropriated funding as we this year funded new hires in police and fire, and next year we are doing some improvements at the fire station. In park non-reverting, it's our cycle to buy new golf carts and also a leaf sweeper. Here's a look at, sorry, it's not labeled. This is the general fund. So as you can see, numerous departments, very small increases. I've noted general fund expenses as a single item, which is in the controller's budget, but that includes health insurance for all the general departments except public safety. It includes payroll taxes for all the general fund departments except public safety as well. And our utilities and property insurance and liability insurance. And this is a simple illustration. We see police and fire is the bulk of the general fund. Now, this is the total budget with all 15 different funds included. And the general fund does not include the police and fire. That's included in the public safety with the other public safety funds. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions for Mrs. McGuire? Mrs. Volker?
Thank you. I just have a couple points of clarification. On, when you were talking about establishing the tax rate,
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure I understand. Our assessed value went down in 2023?
It went down from 23 to 24,
Okay,
$64 million.
okay. And then, thank you, and then I have one other question, if you guys don't mind. I just wanted to understand this last slide with the total budget. I think I was going over something else. So were you saying that the public safety, the 57% public safety includes the public safety portion that was in the general?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions for the controller? Becky, a couple questions, but first let me thank you for the work that you did to put this presentation together. I think this is really valuable for not only the public, but for us to go through this the way that you did. So thank you for doing that. And then thank you for your patience in spending some quality time with us over the course of 3 evenings to go through those meetings with the individual department heads. And it's always enjoyable for us, not only to dig into the finances, but to learn a little bit more about the day-to-day operations and have some good conversation. So we appreciate the work that you do and that the department heads do and the time that everybody spends to meet with us those evenings. A couple follow-up questions with regard to the tax rate calculation that you went through. And that was very helpful to me to have the math laid out the way that you did. When you look at, and I'm focusing on that 2.00 number rather than the higher number that the state encourages us to, build into the process at this point. But is it possible for you to give us a comparison either now or if you want to follow up, that certainly is appropriate, of that number, assuming that we end up plus or minus in that ballpark, how will that tax rate compare to the tax rate that is in place for 2023?
Well, 2023 is 1.85.
Okay. So slight increase.
Yes.
And is that a function of the point that Mrs. Volker illustrated, the drop in the assessed value? We have to have the increase in the tax rate in order to balance out the teeter-totter, correct?
Right, so for 2023, we had such a large assessed value increase. It dropped the tax rate. Many cities and towns actually took on debt to keep the rate level. But we did not do that, because
Okay.
it, as we can see, it worked itself out.
And then during the course of the budget meetings that we had, we talked about a couple of admittedly salary and compensation-related concepts that apply to our work groups, longevity pay and an enhanced deferred comp match, and then some adjustments and then some salaries within various departments.
Right.
Will we hear more about that when we get to the employee salary ordinance stage of the process at the next meeting?
Yes, that's the
Okay.
plan.
So then, in the interest of everybody's time, I'll hold off on those questions until we get there. And then one other topic that came up, and at that time, the numbers weren't fully ripe to be able to share, but has anything changed with regard to our anticipated health insurance costs for next year? Do we know exactly what the renewal amount is going to be at this point in time, or is that still in process?
We have not had that meeting yet with our broker, but our claims, they started off very poorly at the beginning of the year, but they have really leveled off and actually have gone down like more than average. So it's a good trend. We want to keep that up.
Good. That's always good to hear. And then last but not least, not a question, but at the prior council meeting, when, in my rush to thank everybody involved in the process of putting together the change in the police department staffing model and the move to 12-hour shifts, I neglected to thank you because unlike some of us who enjoy that process, you're always a willing participant, but I get the sense that you don't enjoy it as much as others do. But the work that you do to put together numbers in that setting, along with the work that you do for the budget, is critical to what we do to try to arrive at a settlement with our public safety employees. So I appreciate your help at all times, but particularly in assisting us to get to the 12-hour shift model. That's going to be a net positive for the community. So thank you for your work on that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Madam Controller? Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? Please come forward. Then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anyone present this evening who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come forward. And is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition? Are there any council members who wish to speak? Mrs. Volker.
Just real briefly, I just wanted to echo what you said, Mr. President. I always enjoy the budget meetings. Just talking to people and learning about how things are going in their department and understanding what we discussed the year before and how things progress and what their needs are. But I especially wanted to thank you, Becky, for this visual representation, because I think it's really impactful. And for, people learn different ways and understand things different ways, and I think it's very helpful. So I just wanted to thank you for that, too.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Then I'll conclude by thanking the council for your participation in those budget meetings. It's a long week for us as well, but as Mrs. Volker and I have said, it's really a beneficial use of our time, and I think it's important for us to be able to have those type of conversations with not only the controller, but with the department heads. And I am confident in saying that there's a positive that comes out of our interaction with the department heads and with the administration through that positive, or through that process that benefits the community as well. So it's very interactive, it's very collaborative, and very productive. So thank you for everybody from the council who was able to participate in that as well. Any additional questions or comments? Then hearing none, we will conclude the public hearing on proposed ordinance 2023-40, the Civil City budget and tax levy for 2024. And as was mentioned, a vote will take place and is scheduled to take place at the next council meeting on this matter. Thank you. And with that, we'll move into privilege of the floor. At this time, members of the public are invited to the podium to speak with respect to non-agenda items only under privilege of the floor. Seeing no one, is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak under privilege of the floor? Thank you. We'll move into unfinished business, of which there is none. New business. Is there any new business to come before the council? Hearing none, then a motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
We're adjourned. Thank you, folks.
So are you on?